All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll give people a couple seconds to join in, but a lot of times our videos get shared after the fact, so we don't have to delay too long. All right. All right, so thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We just wanted to come on very briefly to talk about something that's really important that's happening in our community starting off next week. And so with me today, I have Mr. Paul Lippens, who represents McKenna, which is a community planning and design firm that the City of Benton Harbor has hired to facilitate the city's master plan process. And then I also have Mr. Lee Reed, who is not only the chair of the Planning Commission, but also serves as one of the phenomenal board members of the Benton Harbor CDC. And so we're just here to talk about the master plan process and how you as a community member and stakeholder can be more engaged in this process. A lot of times we hear that things are happening in the cities, but there are residents' voices at the table. So this is an opportunity to really ensure that your voice is being heard and to be a part of this process. So without further ado, I will kick it off to Paul. So can you tell us a little bit about, well, first, for those who are unfamiliar, what exactly is a master plan?
Thanks, Ashley, and it's good to be here today with Planning Commissioner Chair Lee Reed and you. I had the opportunity to join one of your board meetings with Benton Harbor Community Development Corporation, I think back in February, maybe. I'm really excited about the work that's going on with respect to housing in the community. And, to jump right in, I think one of the really best things we can do with a master plan process is use it as a tool to set new policy for land development. And then by, establishing that policy at the city level, we can update zoning regulations so we can remove barriers to creating new types of housing through a master plan and zoning process. And that's what we're doing now is we're starting kind of with the policy. And then we're going to roll right into updating the zoning code. We have the opportunity to really fix barriers to creating housing in the city, to align zoning regulations with the market and some of the new product types that could be built. But I think even before we get to that, one of the most important things we need to do is work with residents to understand what types of housing opportunities and what types of neighborhood services are needed in Benton Harbor's neighborhoods. We want to make sure that if people want opportunities for new bungalows or to live in apartments within the neighborhoods or to own a duplex and maybe live in one of the units and rent another to a family member or a longtime friend or just a community member, that these types of housing are, needed, generally underrepresented in Michigan neighborhoods and Michigan communities. And I think there's a great opportunity to provide these types of resources in Benton Harbor. But before we talk about the mechanics of how to do it, we also want to know if it's the type of thing people want to see in the neighborhoods. And that's where the master plan comes in.
Right. So I do understand that this process it'll be going on for the next year or so. So starting next week, can you tell us a little bit about what happens with planning week?
Yeah. So what we're excited to do, and it's going to be a full week of activities, and it will be the master plan team, which is myself and some colleagues that are working on the master plan, but also a team of designers and professionals with Eagle who are working specifically on the Ox Creek revitalization effort, including cleanup, parks and riverfront access. And trails and connections. So there's really two exciting projects that we're focusing on next week. The team will be in Benton Harbor from Monday, June 6th through Friday, June 10th. And throughout that week, we have a number of activities that we're promoting, opportunities for people to get involved and really share what individuals' visions are for the growth of the city and their communities.
Great. So I know that well, sorry, Lee, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. Benton Harbor's Planning Commission has a responsibility for enforcing the master plan. And we do that by examining incoming projects for permitted activities in a specific area in the city. And we will examine, in some instances, what the specific project is. We give site plan approvals. We also look at what activities are permitted and which ones need permission from the city commission. But before we forward it to the full city commission, the city staff, your zoning and building administrator will take a look at it to see what it is. And if it requires being forwarded to the city, it'll go through the planning commission first for compliance and for zoning issues, if there are any. So this is one of the things that we'll be looking at with the upcoming projects and informing the citizens of whether or not their projects are fitting into the master plan. So that's why it's so very important for us to have citizen input, so the citizens can become aware of what opportunities that this master planning might present to them and what economic development factors that we might get from some of the information that they pass along to us.
All right. So, Paul, before we get into some more details, we do have a question. Mr. Triplett asks, who are the colleagues? Are they from the City of Benton Harbor? Do you want to speak about some of the partners that are involved and maybe the Planning Advisory Committee, people of that nature?
Sure. Yeah. So my firm, McKenna, was hired through a competitive RFP process to help the city with this process. And we were selected by the City of Benton Harbor's City Commission with Planning Commission representatives as the lead. On my team, it's not just members from McKenna. So we're actually partnered with a firm called Gibbs Planning Group, who is a retail market analyst specialist, and he's actually worked with the City of Benton Harbor in the past. We're also partnered with a community arts-based organization called Dancepire, and Dancepire is based in Grand Rapids, but the CFO or owner of Dancepire, Diavondre Jones, went to Benton Harbor High School, and he's interested in the plan from a personal perspective, but also in the power of community arts to be, a force for organization and bringing forth, visioning for community. So this is part of our youth outreach effort as well. So Diavondre, Bob from Gibbs Planning Group, and then from my team, we also have Adam Cook, who works with us. James Kilborn is a GIS planner who's been helping. And Maya Baker, who is an intern, will be attending the week as well. So that describes kind of the group that is helping with the master plan and zoning ordinance process. Additionally, I mentioned that there's another project being led by Alex Little, the city's community and economic development director, and obviously the city commission as well, to support a revitalization effort for the Ox Creek corridor. And one of the things that's important about Ox Creek is a cleanup effort and a restoration of the habitat. But of course, it also offers an opportunity for important connections to neighborhoods, to this, really interesting and important resource for the community. So the Ox Creek team includes members of the University of Michigan, led by Craig Borum, members of Kansas State's University's Brownfield Technical Assistance Group, led by Beth Grigsby, and members of Eagle, who is the state's environmental quality control group. So it's a state organization, and that's led by Emily Fennell. So we will really have a pretty big team on hand next week. All of the events are happening at the Secret Garden, which is located on Main Street. And I think the really fun thing about working in this planning week format is there's an opportunity for anyone who wants to be involved to interact with consultants. And the idea is transparency in the work. So Ashley, as you mentioned, this is an opportunity for residents to be at the table as this work is done. I think it also is an opportunity for people to see how planners, engineers, and designers work with residents to solve problems, and to foster a collaborative process. What really matters is that the work that is done represents the voices of the community, and we do that through this type of a collaborative process. We like to think about it like the office, for next week, the office will be in Benton Harbor in the community. But again, this is one step in the process. It's a year-long process, and we do have more activities and outreach planned throughout the year as we're refining and developing ideas that eventually would be proposed to a planning commission in a plan for adoption.
I would like to also add that the members of the advisory committee come from the 49022 area. All of them don't live in Benton Harbor, but they are within the area. And what we were looking at is people who've worked with us in the past, who've collaborated and have a good understanding of the city and its issues. So these are the people that come from your neighborhood. They come from various parts of Benton Harbor. And we wanted to make sure that all of the wards were represented. So at the same time, since this is an ongoing process, this will be the initial planning, as Mr. Lippens has indicated. But there will be many workshops later on, and we're going to have focus groups from the various wards. And that's when the citizens will really have a chance to express themselves. And I had suggested to Mr. Lippens that we meet in the neighborhoods, in the places where the citizens normally congregate, and in their neighbors, people who they know. And they can feel at ease talking with their neighbors about what goes on in their community with the other neighbors. So this is one of the things that I thought was very important when we get into looking at neighborhoods and what the needs are in those communities. So each ward will have an opportunity to express itself. And in those wards, we'll include the ward commissioners. And of course, we'll have members of the planning commission will be there at these meetings also, and along with Mr. Lippens and some of his representatives.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for that. And just there's some follow-up questions in the comments, so I just want to comment on them. Just wondering like who the advisors are that's part of the planning advisory committee and why I am not a part of it. So I actually was asked to join the planning advisory committee, and we had our initial meeting maybe about a week and a half ago. There are some strong Benton Harbor Tigers on that advisory committee: Deshauna Robinson, Amby Bell. And, during our initial meeting, that's kind of how this live came up, because we thought it was important to really get the word out about what was happening. And so, like I said, there are some strong advocates that were asking some really tough questions during those meetings. I thought we were going to get kicked off the committee. I'm just kidding. But yeah, and so we really want to ensure, I know a lot of times with these processes, the community engagement aspect can sometimes be perceived as just a box to check, right? And so granted, I know that we don't necessarily control the table, but just being able to have some people who we know that are there and will advocate for the work that's being done
Yes.
on behalf of the citizens is really important for us. And so thank you guys for inviting me to be a part of that process. And thank you to everyone else who, agreed to take a stand and really show up for our community in that way. So Paul, can you also talk now more? I know that you have some slides and graphics to show about some of the meeting details. Do you have those?
Yeah, I'll do a screen share, and
Okay.
I found the comments. I appreciate these follow-up comments as questions as well, and I actually think that this aligns with the whole purpose of doing planning week 2 is, one of the things we heard when we started this process is that, and it comes from almost everyone I talk to. It's a desire for a plan that is implementable, a plan that will result in some actionable changes
for everybody.
for everybody. Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And the only way we can do that is if we actually focus on the work that's being done, right? And I think particularly as related to the Benton Harbor's the CDC, the work of the CDC. And actually, I think I mentioned this to you last time we chatted. I think that housing is the most important topic that planners and community developers are working on today. So, the involvement of, not just this group, but also Harbor Habitat and others, developers that are working on solving these issues, this is why we're collaborating. And this was, why the Planning Commissioner Reed and Planning Commissioner Hensel spent a lot of time thinking about how this process should be developed for the community before they even decided to work with my team. So, I'm hoping that Planning Week is the start of a conversation that we will have over the course of the next year. But the result that I think we're all looking for is a process that involves, meaningful recommendations that actually can be worked on by the people who want to do the work. And that means we've got to get the ideas in the plan. It's got to happen. And I'm confident if we follow the path that Commissioner Reed set forth us, that we'll get there.
Right.
And I can share that. I can share those slides if now would be good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go to share screen. Okay. And I'm going to pick my screen too that has this presentation. So this is actually the presentation that we looked at with the advisory committee a couple weeks ago, and I'm not going to go through it every slide, but I can kind of pause where we think that there are things that are interesting. The first thing I wanted to point out is that there is a website for the project. This website is updated regularly, as even as I get suggestions, is that on the website? I can put more details up. And particularly as we go through Planning Week next week, what we'll start to do is actually put up the materials, ideas, the alternatives that we talk about. Some of the results from those meetings, they will go up on this website so that even if people are not able to attend the meetings, they'll be able to see some of the results. And we usually are able to do that in real time. The other thing that we're hoping to do is, like we're doing today, stream some of these meetings. So this website is pretty important if you want to track the project. There are actually surveys up there now that you can take. You can start giving feedback today even. And you can also submit contact information if you want to continue to be updated through the process. This little graphic here I think is interesting because this matrix on the right, I designed this to show the relationship between projects and goals, because I think one of the things that would be important to come out of this week is a way of organizing all of the work that's done on a day-by-day basis into measurable, vision, goals, objectives, strategies, because every single project helps bring the city further. And one of the outcomes I think we want, as I mentioned, in a master plan is to understand how it will be implemented and measured over time. So to do that, I think we really need to work on a framework for goals, objectives, and strategies. And we've put some ideas out there for feedback. And what we anticipate is that we will adjust, not just the language behind these goals, but the content, based on the feedback we get. So this is part of the work that we're doing next week is identifying projects and ideas, but also adjusting and refining what we think the themes behind that work would be to set goals, objectives, and strategies. And this is the big one. So it's a little hard to see, and but what it's showing is that every day next week, this is taking place at an event venue called the Secret Garden, which is on Main Street. We'll have both those teams, the Ox Creek team and the master plan team, on site all week, and working with the public. And the message that I want to give to people is, if you have time, and you may have 1 hour next week to stop in, the door to the Secret Garden will be open. We will be there working, and everyone is welcome to come and check it out. I think it's going to be fun. And really what this does is it tells you what people will be working on at any given time. But these orange meetings here, these are the meetings that we're advertising and inviting as public-wide presentations. So these are going to be the big events. I think if we get 50 people, 60 people in, it's going to be for these orange events. And it's designed that way because I think this is actually where people will get the most meaningful representation of the work, and also an opportunity to provide direct feedback on the work that's being done. So I would think about it like we've got people working on identifying issues, and then that evening we're going to present the work that was done that day and ask a broader audience for feedback. I think anyone that wants to be involved in exploration of what the issues are should come in the afternoon and participate in these other sessions, which are more like focus groups. Typically, we get somewhere between 10 and 20 people for these sessions. I've certainly done this before, and we've had a lot of people come in the afternoon. And usually what we'll do is we'll just kind of change the format. We'll go to more of a round table discussion, or we'll break out and have multiple people talking. So I think the space that we have is big enough that we can accommodate people to any of these sessions. Ashley, would it be helpful if I talk through what these are titled, or do you think that overview is enough for today?
Yeah, so if you want to, you don't have to go through everything, but because this is so small, and we'll make sure this is shared out publicly so that everyone will have the schedule, and Paul will also be adding it to the website. But if you can just kind of speak on some of the topics that will be discussed, just kind of highlight some of the big ones, that would be great.
Absolutely. And I should also say, Ashley, I think you probably received, as well as other members on the advisory committee, received some invitations with more details on this via email, and those are totally welcome to forward to. So if you have a contact list and you want to share those emails, please do. Those descriptions might help your audience understand a little bit more about what's happening as well. But yeah, let me talk about kind of day by day. So the planning week is designed to create feedback loops. So day one, on Monday, June 6th, we really start in the morning with an existing conditions analysis. So this is really a report back on research that has been done. No recommendations at this point. We're saying this is the research. These are our findings based on analysis that's done to date. That afternoon, working with Commissioner Reed, we are going to tour around the city. So we're going to go visit some of the design sites and some of the issues and opportunities that we learned about through a series of 7 listening sessions that we did really over the winter and into spring. So we heard from commissioners, we heard from some stakeholders about some of the issues in the community, and what those places are that we should focus some of the work on. And these tours are to go. We're going to use the dial ride buses and go actually look at some places around the community. And that's really the whole afternoon on Monday. So Monday is existing conditions. And then we're ending Monday really with a social event. This is the one event that is happening not at the Secret Garden. This will happen at the Livery. They've graciously agreed to host us. And as part of this project, I mentioned working with Dance Spire and Diavondre Jones, we're doing kind of a youth-oriented talent showcase. this is an opportunity to do a little bit of fun. There'll be an open mic. But even if you don't want to share or do anything like get on stage and talk or read some writing, it'll just be an opportunity to meet people. So we like to start with a social event. That's what we're doing on Monday. So day 2, we call day 2 the Vision Day. And this is where we start to explore preferences. So in the morning, we have another public event in the morning on day 2, and that is designed more to learn about specific things in people's neighborhoods or in downtown. Are there places that you want to see fixed? Do you need more neighborhood services? We're going to learn a little bit about the physical constraints of the city and what the preferences are for redevelopment on Monday morning. And then Monday afternoon, we're going to go into focus groups. And I actually think, sorry, I'm on Tuesday. I think I just said Monday. On Tuesday morning, we're doing that. And then Tuesday afternoon, we are going into these focus groups. So we're going to, each hour, try to stick to a schedule. We're going to start by talking about housing access and equity issues. We're going to move on to talk about streets and corridor revitalization, as well as commercial services. And then talk about education, schools, and youth outreach, and then public safety issues and maintenance issues. Those conversations, I think people will flow in and out. Like I said, there's an open door. And we hope to cover in those afternoons a lot of issue identification. That night will be what we call the opening presentation. We will start synthesis of what we've heard and talk about visioning and themes. That evening, I think we will hope that people participate will provide us with some feedback on what their vision is and what themes they think should be explored in the master plan process. So that's broad visioning on Tuesday.
And Paul, add that this is an excellent opportunity for anybody in the community to come in and have a say as to what we found thus far.
Absolutely. Particularly on day 1 is that opportunity to talk, broadly about visioning too. What we hope to do on Wednesday is start to refine what we hear from visioning into a series of, alternatives. So when we look at, maybe specific housing solutions for creating new housing opportunities in neighborhoods, we might start to explore the mechanics in breakout sessions in the morning on what types of housing could fit within neighborhoods. And we'll work the afternoon to refine those ideas. And then the evening of Wednesday, June 8th, what we would like to do is present a series of alternatives. For instance, developing new single-family housing, or preferences for bungalow courts, or preferences for duplexes, the types of housing that might go in a specific neighborhood. We'd present those alternatives based on the ideas we hear on the first 2 days and get feedback about what types of options are most desirable to residents that participate in that day. On Thursday, we will go back into that synthesis and focus group modes. And this is, I think, another interesting opportunity for people who participate to help us see if we have heard the information that was given, and are we coming to the same conclusions. So we call that refining the preferences, and we'll work that day to basically report back. Yesterday we talked about alternatives, we explored some alternatives, and we heard these alternatives were the most desirable from people we spoke with and people we worked with. We want to present that on Thursday. Did we hear this right? Are these preferences, or these items that we heard to be preferenced by participants, does it make sense? And do we have, some consensus or some agreement about these solutions. And that's Thursday. Now, I think the fun thing about this event is it actually aligns with a pretty important event being sponsored at Benton Harbor's high school, which is Benton Harbor's Peace Day. And we are working with representatives that are helping to organize Peace Day to do probably a short announcement about the master plan and the work that we've done at the event at the high school. But then our team plans to participate in the Peace Day walk, which I think will be really exciting. I'm personally super excited to do that walk. I think it will be a really good way of bringing our work to out in the public, and also talking about next steps. As I mentioned, even with us preparing and talking about the preferences, all of the alternatives and even feedback and refinement of the preference, that we'll be working on that over the course of the next year. As Commissioner Reed mentioned, we do plan to do a series of neighborhood workshops, but we also plan to work with the advisory committee to help to continue to get feedback on ideas as we refine and present them into a draft plan. And we usually do that in steps, right? So it's not like we're going to do this and all of a sudden we'll have a draft plan. We'll be working with the advisory committee and with Planning Commission and the City Commission to continually get feedback on ideas as we work and refine them. So usually we'll present what we might call a 30% plan, and then a 50% and a 70%. So as we get feedback, we'll continue to work these concepts to a point where hopefully, and what I like to say is, we might not have a plan that everybody agrees on everything in the plan, but we do want a plan that everybody who wants to work for the betterment of Benton Harbor will have something in the plan that they can support, advocate for, and work on. We're going to get it all started next week in Planning Week. I think the exciting thing about this is by the end of Planning Week, we actually can start talking about real ideas. We can start saying that these are ideas that we heard support for in the community, and we want to know how deep that support is. And we also want to know if there's more things that we need to think about.
All right, great. So I have a couple questions. Thank you for going through that. But now I have some questions based off that. So after Planning Week, are there other opportunities for engagement of the community at large throughout this process for the remaining year, or would it just be for the Planning Advisory Committee?
It will be for the community at large. Lee, do you want to?
Yes, I was going to indicate that when we were looking at who we were going to select, we were looking for somebody who already had a history of working with Benton Harbor. And we go almost 10 years back, and there was McKenna and some of the associates that they're working with. So we knew that they already had a pretty good idea of some of the issues and problems that we had with Benton Harbor. But I also indicated to him that we are very concerned about neighborhoods. So there's a lot of talk going around now that we're putting a tremendous amount of emphasis on Ox Creek. But I think if you all have ever gone down Ox Creek, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of vacant land where we could establish new housing and different types of housing. There's also several commercial corridors that Ox Creek runs through that's in the neighborhoods for redevelopment. So there's a tremendous amount of interest in what we call middle housing. And we're going to talk about that. And this is the thing that I went to Lansing last week. They had a summit there with the state, and they brought in some experts from out of who are familiar with things going on around the world when it comes to housing. Most of you who may have been aware, gas prices, inflation, cost of food, all of this. Housing now has gotten to be so expensive that many of the people who were eligible to buy houses just several years ago have basically been priced out of the market. So we had to look at alternatives for neighborhood revitalization and housing. So those are going to be the things that we're going to have to go deeper on. Planning Week, will simply give us a direction to go in, but we're going to have focus groups where we'll meet in the wards talking with the people who live there about issues and things that they are willing to support. And community support for this plan is very important. So we've heard people speak about the fact that in the last master plan, they didn't have an opportunity to participate. So with our work groups in the community, where everybody will have an opportunity to come out, even if you didn't make it to planning week, we can come and meet you where you are and help you to be heard. So these are some of the things that we'll be looking at after planning week.
Thank you. Mr. Triplett said he grew up in Clean Ox Creek as a child. Every year, being a student at Sealy McCourt Elementary School, it's always fun, like hearing the stories of people visiting the parks and things like that as it relates to Ox Creek. Because growing up, that was not something that we experienced a lot. I had no idea that it even extended as far as it did until we met a couple weeks ago. So it's really cool to hear. Paul, you mentioned on Tuesday that part of the discussion would be about education, schools, and youth. How does that fit into the master plan? Since the school or education is kind of ran by a different entity, how does that fit into the overall structure of this plan?
I mean, I think it's a good question. I would say it is, the way that these breakout sessions are designed is designed around issues that I heard were important in many of the listening sessions that we did in the winter and kind of rolling into spring. And with respect to school planning, right, there are a lot of school sites in the city. Some of them are being used for non-school uses. Some of them are still active. There are other schools that are vacant. And the planning for reuse of schools, I think, is important, but also the planning for schools as schools is important. And there is a little bit of a disconnect between how school systems plan for themselves and what the city can control. So the city doesn't actually have the ability to control how the school utilizes their properties, how the school designs and plans for its systems. But the city can influence those systems through collaboration and shared goals and objectives. One of the things that I find in master plan processes is that even if we say, sometimes we'll say, ultimately, we want to create a future land use map so that we can have good development decisions that align with the city's land policies, which the city does have the ability to zone land. But there's a whole other issues slew of issues that go into the quality of life, and education is one of them. So I think we need to provide an opportunity to talk about the school system, to talk about education, and to talk about how the school sites are integral to how the neighborhoods function and how people identify with neighborhoods. So I do hope to explore those issues. I also think within this discussion, another important thing is to talk about just job training. So it's, I think, beyond youth. It's educational opportunities beyond primary and secondary education as well, that we might talk about. And then I think also this idea of youth engagement it's important, and we want to not just provide opportunities to, talk about how young people have opportunities for advancement in the community, but also how young people have opportunities to influence the plan. One of the things that I have noticed in many of my listening sessions is that a lot of the people who are participating in actively creating a new and better future for Benton Harbor are people who grew up in Benton Harbor and went to school in Benton Harbor and maybe left for university but are coming back, or our colleague DeAndre Jones, who lives in and works in Grand Rapids, but is, invested in the future of the city and is really excited to work on arts issues in the city. So, in thinking about youth, I actually think what we're really doing is we're engaging the people who will be living the plan that we hope to create in 20 years. So, this is, these are issues to explore, and I think we need to hear and discuss what's important to the community, which is why I think we suggested doing a breakout session on this topic would be important.
Great. Thank you. No, that makes perfect sense. I was just curious. And so one last question that we have in the comments. Has anyone talked to the Housing Commission and Director? Each housing complex has meeting rooms and conference rooms. Are you all going to these places and spaces?
The answer is yes, but we have not spoken directly with them yet. We're looking for planning week to kind of give us a direction to go in. We want to keep our plans at this point as broad as possible. We want to hear as many voices. I asked Paul to avoid steering people in any particular project. Once you dig deep into a particular project, you're going to silence the voices of people who might have something else to say. And I did want to add that when you come to the meetings, many people are kind of shy about speaking in public. I want to assure everybody that we're going to have a chance to be heard. You will have a chance to be heard. And these are the type of things that I asked Paul to do when we started talking about breakout groups. We want to go into the community where the people are that weren't able to participate during planning week. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for people to discuss in depth some of the issues that we might bring up during planning week.
Great. All right. Well, that's all I have. Do you guys have anything else that you want to share before we sign off?
I would add, and maybe then I'll defer to Commissioner Reed to have the last word. One of the things that I've tried to do is remain extremely flexible, and I would say that for anyone who really wants to be involved in this process, there's no need to rely strictly on formal opportunities. And this is one of the things that we've been looking for, is creating a little bit of flexibility and actually creating a network of people who want to be involved in this process, because the people who want to be involved in this process are also the people who will want to be involved in implementing the plan. So these things go hand in hand. So I would say it's not just planning week that starts this open door policy. My strategy to helping facilitate this process has been to make myself available to people, and to think about how we can be flexible to make sure those opportunities are created. We have had invitations to participate in community events. Commissioner Edwards helped us get a bunch of flyers at a Blossom Parade. We will continue to look for opportunities to bring some of the content that we start to develop in planning week out into any formal and informal setting where people want to have these discussions. And the other thing that we want to do is stream some events. And so if you're not able to come, you can watch at home. And I certainly would encourage watch parties or anything like that. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to do like we're doing today and take some comments over chat. I actually like this StreamYard platform. Ashley introduced me to it, and I think we might try to use this. It's a pretty good platform. So, if you haven't seen me in person and you can't come to planning week, I would say there will be plenty of opportunities to meet and talk about how this can be an important project and hopefully a catalytic project for the community. And that's my close. I'll give it to Lee.
Planning is an opportunity to see into the future. This is something that a lot of people don't do much of nowadays. But you could actually plan your outcomes. We older folks want to step back. If we're planning for 5, 10 years out, just add that to your current age. So as far as I'm concerned, this is being done for the young people. If you're 35 or younger, this is your opportunity to get involved in what this city is going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years from now. Older folks, we kind of know where we want to go. Most of us have already been there. So encourage the young people to come out, encourage them to get involved. Some of the things that we're going to come up with will offer entrepreneurial opportunities for them to grow the city. I believe in asset-based community development that's building on your current assets. And Benton Harbor, we have all kinds of assets. In real estate, we call it location, location, location. We have some of the best places to grow our city. The infrastructure, most of it is already there, although some of it's a little bit aged, but those are issues that we're going to be looking at. I'm encouraging everybody to speak up. You have a voice. You've been given an opportunity to use it. Don't wait till everything is said and done to speak up. Get involved in the planning now. That's about where I want to leave it. I don't want to get on a soapbox. I've been known to preach, although that's not my calling.
Yes, definitely have been on the receiving end on some of the sermons that Lee has to offer. So, but thank you both again for taking the time to just share this information with the community. If you see this video on your timeline, please share it out. I cannot express enough how important this process is going to be for our generation and future generations to come, really helping to lay the groundwork on what our community is going to look like. Lee mentioned asset-based community development, and last year, the Benton Harbor CDC conducted an asset mapping project called Reimagining Community, really honing in on, what was special about our community and what assets we already have. And what we realized is that, through this work, we don't have to just imagine what our community can look like. We can actually make that happen. And being a strong partner and contributor to that process is so important for all of us. So please share this. If you have, like Paul said, even just an hour of your time to come to one of these meetings, please feel free to do that. If you have any questions following the live, feel free to contact me, or you can contact us through the Benton Harbor CDC page, and we can get the message to Paul and Lee, any questions that you may have. So thank you guys again for tuning in.
Thank you for the...
Appreciate it, everybody.
Oh, I think we lost Lee. All righty, bye.
Thanks, Ashley. We'll see you soon.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.